Hello, why is there no Junction 6 on the M27? Did someone forget about it? Did we run out of money perhaps? Or maybe someone just changed their mind? F*** knows. But today we're going to find out, whilst also exploring some of the other abandoned, unfinished or cancelled motorway projects in and around the south of the Hampton. My name is John, welcome to Auto Shenanigans. Why not consider subscribing? The M27 is a 28-mile motorway that saw its construction begin in 1972 before opening in stages between 1975 and 1983. Yeah, it took 8 years to open 28 miles of motorway. It's England's primary, rather only South Coast motorway, but with the South Coast consisting of a few hundred miles, it's fair to say they've fallen short of the mark somewhat. It mostly connects Southampton with Portsmouth, and near each end you'll find small link motorways known as the M271 and M275. However, in the early days of the M27's planning, there was the idea that the M27 would feature a total of 6 small linking motorways. We built 2 of them. What happened to the rest? Bloody good question, old chap, and we'll certainly be looking into it, but perhaps we should start with the first in sequence, the M270, which is also known as the A36M, although it's never been officially signposted as either of those. You'll find it at Junction 2 on the M27, and it's a half-mile long 2-lane motorway complete with hard shoulders. Today it's known as the A36, but when it opened in 1975, it was absolutely a motorway and under the appropriate regulations for such a road, which at the time made sense. The road layout back then was simpler, with the half-mile motorway acting as a spur or link connection to the M27. With nowhere for traffic to go other than onto a motorway, you might as well class the whole lot as a motorway, and if nothing else, it helps prevent tractors and inappropriate vehicles from finding their way onto the motorway. But would it have been the M270 or the A36M? It turns out probably neither. All of the maps suggest that from its opening it was considered as part of the M27, which, yeah, it was. However, it's been suggested that within some old highways documents it was intended to be numbered as the M270 as part of a sequence of linked motorways on the M27, but plans changed, so the M270 just became part of the M27. As for the A36M number, this is a bit of a fan theory where it's been suggested that because the A36 meets the M270 or M27 terminus, it acts as an extension for the road, but under motorway regulations, making it the A36M. Fair enough, but there's no evidence to support that, and either way, the motorway spur has never been signed as the M270 or the A36M. And since the opening of the A326 dual carriageway on the other side of Junction 2, the M27/M270 spur has had its motorway restrictions removed, and it's been downgraded to become part of the A36, resulting in the loss of the motorway link forever. Although not really, it's still there, it's just been renumbered. But if you want to experience what it was like in the motorway days, take a trip along the M271, which has a near identical spur, although unlike the M270, the 271 was built as a proper motorway, albeit a very short one, and since it very much exists today, let's move on to the next in sequence, the M272. This one's interesting because the M272 was first mentioned on plans designed in the late 1960s, so we know the M272 was a legit motorway number. Those plans drew out the vision for Southampton and Portsmouth motorway network featuring the M27 and the various links and spurs connecting to it, where the intention was for the M272 to run as a 3-lane motorway from Junction 5 of the M27 right into Southampton city centre, where at the end of the motorway would have been huge car parks allowing you to park up and walk around town, which sounds delightful. It actually made a lot of sense because in addition to the motorway plans, land to the north of Junction 5 had been earmarked for development, with the expectation that over the next few decades 39,000 houses would be built, all of which could enjoy direct motorway access to the city centre. For that reason, out of everything we're looking at today, the M272 was the most likely to be built, and it so very nearly was. But then the residential development was cancelled, and a new council came along in 1974 and said, no thanks, we're not interested, and gone was the M272. A shame really, because had the M272 been built, Junction 5 on the M27 would have looked very different indeed. Rather than a boring standard roundabout style junction, it would have been a massive free-flowing motorway to motorway interchange built to facilitate those 39,000 houses. Although interestingly, whilst the M272 wasn't built, the plan was sort of photocopied and reused at a later date. Whilst we're missing a huge interchange, the short section of A335 connecting junction 5 to the A35 is built along the same alignment allocated for the M272, although it's been slightly downgraded to a two-lane dual carriageway. And it's the same situation for Thomas Lewis Way, a bit of an odd road that for the most part is perfectly straight. The reason is that it's built along what was going to be the route of a motorway. These roads opened in the late 1980s, long after the M272's cancellation, but it's quite obvious that they reused the original plan, so in some respects we did get some of the M272, just a very crap version of it. And it's a similar story to the next in sequence, the M273, although it's not as convincing. This is the M273, or it would be had it been built. You'll notice this chunk of land next to the road. It's a bit tight, but you could definitely fit a motorway in here, and indeed that was the plan. Known as the Townhill Link Motorway and most likely numbered as the M273, it would have connected the M27 to what's known as the Mousehole Roundabout, and the idea was that it would serve the thousands of residents living within the Townhill area of Southampton, who conveniently would have had gardens backing onto said motorway. Lovely. You'd think that the close proximity to residents would be the reason for the M273's cancellation, but that wasn't something that concerned the road planners. In the end, it was cancelled because they decided that a motorway built in a residential area with nothing important connected to it was a bit of a waste of time, really. Sure, it would have been nice, but it didn't seem to serve any real purpose, so it was cancelled. In its place, they constructed Townhill Way, a fairly ordinary road that in some places follows the route of what would have been the M273, and on those sections, as we've seen, the road has been built with space to expand the road into something larger, like a motorway, although considering the plan had been cancelled, there doesn't seem to be any reason as to why they've done that. The Townhill Link Motorway, or M273, would have connected up with the M27 right about here, most likely via a limited access junction laid out a bit like this. This junction would have been numbered as junction number 6, the missing M27 junction. It wasn't built because they didn't think it was important, and with all of the other junctions on the M27 planned out already, it was just easier to ignore the lack of a junction 6 and keep all of the other junction numbers as the same. You'll work it out. Our last not built motorway is the M274, although there's a couple of issues with this one, but we'll get to that. Let's first take a look at what was supposed to happen. Junction 12 on the M27 is a huge free-flowing interchange between the M275, M27 and this bit, which until fairly recently connected to a sizable roundabout. Had the idea of the M274 been carried out, additional slip roads and carriageways would have been built connecting the two roundabouts, and these, along with that weird bit, would have been crammed in as the M274. But it wasn't, because what I just said might be a load of bollocks. The layout is drawn from various maps of the time, which may not be 100% accurate, and in any case, the M274 number, much like the M270, got mentioned briefly somewhere once or twice in a Highways Department document. As it stands, no one has found any actual plans stating that the M274 number will be used in any capacity. However, the fact it got mentioned has, over the years, led to the creation of many theories as to what the M274 would have been. Another theory is that the M274 could have been laid out a bit like this, incorporating the A27. Whilst a bit odd in its layout, it certainly goes some way to explaining the excess space between the carriageways and the elongated roundabout that's found here. And I think I favour this design, simply because it makes the most sense as a little motorway spur. But in any case, the M274 is very much a theory backed by the tiniest piece of evidence that, for me, was enough to include it in this video. And to be fair, we couldn't go from M270 to M275 without ticking off every number.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
So that's exactly what we've done. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you very much for watching. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care. Bye-bye.